There is a kind of warmth that asks for nothing. You might have felt it once, sitting near someone who simply allowed you to be exactly as you were. No fixing, no improving, no silent inventory of what should change, just presence. The warmth itself was the whole offering. This quality exists. It moves through the world quietly, often unnoticed. A hand steadying an elbow on the bus. Eyes that meet yours without judgment when you fumble your words. The way a good friend listens to the same worry for the third time without sighing. These moments are not accidents. They come from something that can be practiced, something the early Buddhist texts call Metta. Unconditional friendliness. Goodwill that does not wait for conditions to be met first. Before we go further, notice where you are right now. The surface beneath you, the temperature of the air, the quiet or the sounds around you. Your breath moving in and out without effort, without you having to remember how. You are already here. That is enough. Metta is not manufactured enthusiasm. It is not forcing yourself to feel something warm and golden toward every person you meet. It is more like learning to stop bracing. Most of us move through the day with a subtle tension, a readiness to protect or defend or prove. Metta is what begins to emerge when that tension softens. It is the natural state underneath the guarding. Think of a dog who has been mistreated. When you reach toward it, it flinches, not because your hand is dangerous, but because it has learned to expect danger. Over time, if you move slowly and keep your voice soft, the flinching decreases. One day the dog stands still, another day it leans in. The friendliness was always possible. It was waiting beneath the fear. We are not so different. We flinch too. Someone cuts us off in traffic and the heart hardens instantly. A colleague takes credit and we withdraw. A loved one forgets something important and we build a small wall. These reactions are old. They come from a part of us that learned early to sort the world into safe and unsafe, friend and threat. Metta practice does not shame this part. It simply offers another possibility. You can begin exactly where you are. Not with strangers, not with people who have harmed you. You begin with yourself. This might sound simple, but notice what happens when you try. Sit quietly and say inwardly, "May I be safe. May I be peaceful. May I be healthy. May I live with ease." Some people feel warmth immediately, others feel nothing. Some feel resistance, even irritation. All of this is workable. The practice is not in the feeling, it is in the willingness to offer the words again and again, like water on a stone. The Buddha taught Metta as one of 4 qualities called the Brahma Viharas, the divine abodes. Unconditional friendliness, compassion for suffering, gladness in the joy of others, equanimity in the face of change. These are not moral obligations. They are refuges, places the heart can rest. Metta is the foundation. It is the baseline friendliness that makes the others possible. When you practice metta toward yourself, you are not trying to like everything about yourself. You are not papering over real pain with affirmations. You are learning to meet yourself the way that warm presence met you, without the need to fix first, without conditions. This is radical because we have been taught the opposite. We have been taught that we earn kindness by improving, by being less difficult, by finally getting it right. Metta says no. The friendliness comes first. It does not wait. After some time with yourself, the practice widens. You bring to mind someone easy, someone who naturally evokes warmth, a teacher, a child, a friend who has always seen you clearly. You picture them and offer the same phrases. May you be safe. May you be peaceful. May you be healthy. May you live with ease. You are not sending anything. You are not trying to make something happen across distance. You are simply letting the heart incline toward goodwill, like turning your face toward sun. The metaphor of warmth returns here. It does not burn. It does not demand. It simply radiates. When you sit with Metta, you are learning to let that warmth exist without grasping it, without needing it to prove anything. Some days it feels strong, some days it feels like nothing at all. Both are fine. The practice is the returning, the willingness to begin again. Now we will sit together and practice, not as a performance, not to achieve a particular state, simply to incline the heart toward friendliness and see what happens. There is a kind of warmth we think we should be able to summon on command. We hear about loving kindness, about metta, and we imagine it as something we can produce through effort, like turning up a dial. But when we actually sit down to practice, something unexpected happens. We try to send warmth toward ourselves, and the chest tightens. We try to extend goodwill toward someone difficult, and we feel the heart pull back, closing like a fist clenched around sand. This closing is not a failure. It is information. The Buddha said that hatred never ceases by hatred, but by love alone is healed. We often hear this as instruction, as if love is something we must manufacture to fix what is broken. But the teaching points to something quieter. It describes what happens when we stop adding more force to force, when we stop clenching harder around what we already hold too tightly. Metta is sometimes translated as loving kindness, but the word itself is closer to friendliness. Not the bright performance of affection, but the simple quality of being friendly, of not being at war. And this is where the confusion begins. We think friendliness must feel a certain way. We think it requires a specific warmth in the chest, a glow we can point to. So when we sit and repeat the phrases, "May I be happy, may I be peaceful," we are also checking, monitoring, waiting for the feeling to arrive. And when it does not, we clench harder, like closing a fist around sand, trying to hold what keeps slipping through. You have likely felt this in ordinary moments. Someone says something that irritates you, and you tell yourself you should not be irritated, you should be kind, you should be understanding. And beneath that instruction, the chest tightens further, the jaw sets, the breath shortens. You are now irritated at being irritated, and beneath that, irritated at failing to be kind. The original moment has multiplied into a small war, all of it happening in the space where friendliness was supposed to be. This is not metta. This is force meeting force. The practice of metta does not begin with generating warmth. It begins with noticing where warmth is already blocked, where the heart is quietly closed, where you are, without realizing it, clenching. You might notice it today, just once, a moment when your chest tightens around someone. It could be subtle. A colleague speaks and something in you pulls back. A family member makes a request and the shoulders rise. A stranger moves slowly in front of you and the breath catches. You do not need to fix it. You do not need to force yourself to feel warmth in that moment. You only need to notice that the tightening has happened. This noticing is not small. It is the beginning of the entire path. Because once you see the contraction, you also see that it is not permanent. It arose, it is here, and it will pass. You are not the contraction. You are the space in which it appears. The fist clenched around sand is trying to hold something that cannot be held. The tighter the grip, the faster it slips away. And at some point, the hand realizes it does not need to hold at all. It can simply open. Not because someone commanded it to open, not because it failed at holding, but because holding was always optional. Metta is what remains when you stop forcing. This does not mean you will suddenly feel boundless love for everyone. It means you stop adding violence to the moment. You stop treating your own resistance as an enemy. You stop clenching around the clenching. And in that small gap, something shifts. Not because you made it shift, but because you stopped making it stay. The phrases of metta practice, may you be safe, may you be happy, may you be healthy, may you live with ease, are not spells to conjure feeling. They are gentle suggestions offered to a heart that has been at war with itself. They are an invitation to stop fighting, to stop performing, to simply be friendly the way you might be friendly with a stray cat. No force, no expectation, just a quiet willingness to not be hostile. You will know the difference when it happens. Forcing kindness feels like work. It feels like pushing something uphill. Noticing resistance feels like rest. It feels like setting something down. One is clenching, the other is opening the hand just slightly to see what happens when you stop holding so hard. There is a reason you have not yet begun. It is not laziness, it is not resistance. It is that somewhere, perhaps in a book or a teaching, you encountered the idea that metta meditation means sending love to the person who hurt you most, that it means softening toward the one whose name still tightens your jaw. And so the whole practice became a mountain you were not ready to climb. You would not ask someone who has never been in water to swim across the deep end of the pool. You would not say, begin where it is hardest, where the bottom disappears and the breath catches. You would lead them to the shallow water first. You would let them feel their feet on solid ground. You would let them learn that water can hold them before asking them to trust it completely. Metta works the same way. The instruction is simple, but it has been misunderstood. The Buddha spoke of a mother protecting her only child, cherishing all living beings with a boundless heart. But boundless does not mean we begin with the whole world at once. It means we begin where the heart is already a little bit open, where friendliness is already present, even if quietly. You know this feeling. There is someone in your life who makes you smile without effort. Maybe it is a friend who listens without fixing. Maybe it is a neighbor whose dog greets you each morning. Maybe it is a teacher whose voice you still remember. Maybe it is someone you have never met, but whose presence feels kind. It does not need to be a grand love. It does not need to be your closest person. It only needs to be someone toward whom your heart is already soft. This is where metta begins, not with the one who harmed you, not with the stranger whose politics make you recoil, not even at first with yourself if that feels too tangled. You begin in the shallow water. You begin where it is easy. Bring that person to mind now if you like. See their face or simply feel their presence. Notice what happens in your chest, in your throat, in the space behind your eyes. There may be a softness there, a gentle warmth. It does not need to be large. It only needs to be real. And then, for 30 seconds, let yourself wish them well. You can use words if that helps. May you be happy. May you be peaceful. May you be safe. Or you can simply rest in the feeling of goodwill, the way you might rest your hand on the shoulder of someone you care for. There is no need to manufacture anything. You are not creating metta. You are recognizing what is already there. 30 seconds, that is all. This is not a small thing. This is how the heart learns its own capacity. When you let yourself feel friendliness towards someone who already brings it out in you, you are teaching yourself that metta is not a heroic act. It is not a moral achievement. It is a natural warmth that lives in you, waiting to be noticed. The shallow water is not a compromise. It is not training wheels you will one day discard. It is the place where you learn that you can float. And once you know that, once your body remembers that water holds you, the deep end becomes possible. Not because you have become stronger, but because you have learned to trust what was always there. You may have heard that metta practice involves categories. First yourself, then a benefactor, then a friend, then a neutral person, then a difficult person. This is one way. But it is not the only way, and it is not the beginning. The beginning is simply this, finding one place where your heart is not defended, one person toward whom kindness flows without force. From there, it grows. Not because you push it, not because you decide to be a better person, but because metta, like water, spreads when it is given space. When you let yourself feel genuine warmth for one person, the heart begins to remember its own nature. It begins to soften at the edges. And in time, without effort, that softness reaches further. But only if you start where it is easy. If you have been waiting to begin metta practice until you are ready to forgive the unforgivable, you can stop waiting. That is not the door. The door is someone who already makes you smile. 30 seconds of wishing them well. That is enough. That is how it begins. The boundless heart the Buddha spoke of is not built in a day. It is built in shallow water, one breath at a time, until you realize you have been floating all along. You have probably heard the metta phrases many times. May I be happy. May I be peaceful. May I be free from suffering. They sound simple. They sound kind. And if you are like most people, you have sat down with them, repeated them carefully, and wondered why nothing is happening. The words go out into the air. You say them again. You try to feel them. You adjust your posture, soften your face, slow your breath. Still, the phrases feel hollow. A recipe is not the meal. You can read the instructions for bread 100 times, but your hands will stay clean and your kitchen will stay cold. There is a teaching from the Zen tradition that says the finger pointing at the moon is not the moon. The phrase is a gesture. It shows a direction. But we mistake the gesture for the destination. We think if we repeat the words with enough sincerity, they will produce the feeling we imagine metta should be. We think the recipe will fill us. Metta is often translated as loving kindness, but unconditional friendliness is closer. It is not a surge of warmth or a sudden opening of the heart. It is a quality of allowing, a willingness to meet what is here without pushing it away. And the phrases are not magic words. They do not manufacture that willingness. They point toward it. When you say, may I be happy, and nothing happens, that is not failure. That is information. The phrase has done its work. It has pointed. Now you can look at what it is pointing toward, not the thought of happiness, not the idea of peace, but the actual texture of this moment in your body. Try this now if you are willing. Say one phrase aloud, just one. May I be peaceful. Say it in your normal voice. Do not whisper it like a prayer. Do not perform it. Then stop. Do not say it again. Instead, notice what happens in your body. Not what you think about the phrase, not whether you believe it or feel it. Just the sensations that arise after the sound leaves your mouth. You might notice your chest. You might notice your throat. You might notice tension in your shoulders or softness in your belly. You might notice nothing at all, just a flatness, a weighting. All of this is the moon. The phrase was the finger. You have already moved past it. Most of us treat the metta phrases like a spell. We think if we say them enough times, in the right order, with the right intention, they will transform us. But a recipe is not the meal. The instructions do not feed you. You have to crack the eggs. You have to feel the dough under your hands. You have to notice when it is too dry, when it needs water, when it is ready to rest. The phrases are invitations. They invite you to turn your attention toward your actual experience. When you say, may I be free from suffering, the question is not whether you suddenly feel free. The question is, what does suffering feel like right now? Where is it located? Is it in your jaw? Is it in the tightness behind your eyes? Is it in the thought that you are doing this wrong? You do not need to fix any of it. You do not need to make it go away. You are simply noticing that the phrase has pointed you towards something real. The finger is doing its job. You do not need to stare at the finger. This is why metta practice can feel so frustrating at first. We think we are supposed to generate a feeling. We think the phrases are the point, but the phrases are just the beginning. They are the question, not the answer. When you say, may I be happy, you are not declaring happiness. You are asking, what is here right now? What is the felt sense of this moment before I try to change it? Sometimes what is here is tension. Sometimes it is numbness. Sometimes it is a small flicker of ease that you almost missed because you were waiting for something bigger. All of this is workable. All of this is the ground of metta. Not the idea of friendliness, but the willingness to be present with what is true. You can say the phrase again if you want, "May I be safe." But this time, let it be a reminder to feel, not to think. Let it point you back to your body, to the rise and fall of your breath, to the temperature of your skin, to the weight of your bones. The moon is already here. You do not need the finger anymore. You just need to look. You know the phrases by now. May you be happy. May you be peaceful. May you be free from suffering. You send them outward like small paper boats, one after another, toward people you love, toward strangers, toward those who have hurt you. The words move through your mind in careful sequence. But while you are doing this, your jaw may be clenched. Your shoulders might be drawn up near your ears. There may be a dull ache in your lower back or a tightness across your chest that has been there so long you have stopped noticing it. You are offering kindness to the world while your own body sits ungreeted, like a guest you have forgotten to welcome at your own door. This happens more often than we realize. We learn the metta practice and we follow the form. We begin with ourselves, then move to a benefactor, a friend, a neutral person, a difficult person, and finally, all beings everywhere. The structure is clear. But somewhere in that progression, the body becomes invisible. It becomes the thing that holds the mind, while the mind does the real work. We forget that this flesh, these bones, this breath, this sensation of pressure or heat or coldness is also part of what we mean when we say self. It is not separate from the one we are trying to befriend. The Buddha said this body is not yours, nor does it belong to others. It is old action to be seen as it is. Old action means the result of causes set in motion long ago. Choices made, food eaten, stress held, rest taken or not taken. Patterns of tension learned in childhood. The way you brace when you hear a certain tone of voice. This body is not a possession. It is a process. It is conditions meeting and changing. And right now, in this moment, it is here. It is asking to be seen. When we ignore the body while practicing metta, we are repeating an old habit. We are saying that kindness is something we think, not something we feel. We are treating the body as a container we must transcend rather than a living presence we can meet. But metta is not transcendence. It is not an escape from the physical. It is a softening toward what is. And what is, right now, includes sensation. It includes the small, persistent discomforts we have learned to override. You might notice this if you pause. If you stop sending the phrases outward for a moment and simply feel where you are, there may be a knot between your shoulder blades. There may be a faint nausea in your belly. There may be a coldness in your hands or a heat behind your eyes. These are not obstacles to metta. They are not distractions from the real practice. They are the guest standing quietly at your door, waiting to be acknowledged. So the practice changes slightly. You place one hand on your chest. You feel the warmth of your palm against your skin or against the fabric of your shirt. You feel the rise and fall of your breath beneath your hand. And then you bring your attention to one area of tightness or pain, not the worst pain, not the one that frightens you most, just one small area that is asking to be noticed. It might be your throat. It might be your jaw. It might be a place in your ribs that feels compressed. You do not try to fix it. You do not try to make it go away. You simply breathe into that place. You let the breath move toward it the way you would let your attention move toward a friend who is sitting quietly across from you. You do not need special words. You do not need to repeat the phrases if they feel distant. You can simply breathe and feel. You can let the kindness be in the quality of your attention, not in the content of your thoughts. This is metta as a physical act, not an idea about kindness, but an actual softening. You may feel the muscles begin to release, just slightly. You may feel warmth spreading where there was tightness. You may feel nothing at all except the breath moving in and out. All of this is fine. You are not trying to produce a result. You are learning to greet what has been waiting. The body is impermanent. It is changing in every moment. The tightness you feel now is not the same tightness you felt an hour ago, even if it seems identical. It is made of new conditions, new tension, new breath, new awareness. When you meet it with kindness, you are not fixing something broken. You are participating in the change that is already happening. You are letting the process include softness instead of only bracing. This guest at your door has been patient. It has waited through all the times you sent Metta outward and forgot to turn toward what was near. It does not need you to be perfect. It does not need you to feel flooded with love. It only needs you to place your hand on your chest, to breathe, and to notice. That is enough. That is the beginning of unconditional friendliness. Not as a distant ideal, but as a quiet presence here in your own flesh. You sit down to practice Metta, loving kindness meditation, and you begin with the phrases, "May I be safe. May I be happy. May I be healthy. May I live with ease." You say them quietly, directing them toward yourself, and you wait for warmth to arrive. You wait for softness. You wait for something that feels like love. And what comes instead is nothing. Not peace, not resistance exactly. Just a kind of blankness. The words feel like stones dropped into a dry well. No echo, no splash. You keep going because the instructions say to keep going, but after a few minutes, the whole thing feels hollow. You wonder if you are doing it wrong. You wonder if Metta is even possible for someone like you. This is not failure. This is not evidence of a hard heart. It is simply what happens when we approach Metta as something we must produce, something we should already be feeling, something we can force into being through repetition and effort. The teaching from the Mahayana tradition offers a different view. Compassion is not a feeling to be manufactured, but a natural response when the heart is unobstructed. The key word is unobstructed. Metta does not need to be built. It needs to be allowed. When you sit with the phrases and feel nothing, you are likely sitting with aversion. Not the loud kind that announces itself as anger or irritation, the quiet kind. The kind that tightens around the instruction itself, around the expectation of warmth, around the demand that this practice deliver a particular experience right now. Aversion does not always look like pushing away. Sometimes it looks like grasping at what is not yet here. Sometimes it looks like impatience with what is. Think of a well that appears dry until you wait long enough for the water to seep back in. If you peer down into the darkness and see only stone, you might assume the well is empty. You might walk away. But if you sit at the edge and wait, not doing anything, not demanding anything, the water begins to return. It comes from underground sources you cannot see. It fills slowly, at its own pace, from the bottom up. Metta is like this. When the heart feels dry, it is not because kindness is absent. It is because the conditions are not yet right for it to surface. And the primary obstruction is often this, the belief that Metta should feel like something other than what is present right now. So, the practice shifts. Instead of beginning with phrases, instead of aiming for a feeling, you might try something quieter. Sit for 5 minutes without any meta phrases, simply noticing what is present, not analyzing it, not fixing it, just noticing. If there is blankness, notice blankness. If there is boredom, notice boredom. If there is a faint hum of frustration or a sense of waiting for something to happen, notice that too. This is not giving up on Metta. This is preparing the ground. You are learning to be with yourself as you actually are, not as you think you should be. You are learning to meet your own experience without the overlay of expectation. And this meeting, this willingness to sit with what is dry or dull or resistant, is itself a form of friendliness. The well does not fill because you demand it. It fills because you stop disturbing the soil. You stop digging. You stop checking every 30 seconds to see if the water has arrived. You sit at the edge and you wait. And the waiting is not passive. It is alert. It is patient. It is a kind of trust that what is needed will come when the conditions allow. When you sit without the phrases, you may notice how much pressure you have been placing on this practice, how much you have been grading yourself, how tightly you have been holding the idea that Metta must feel warm, must feel open, must feel like the descriptions you have read in books. And when you stop grading, when you stop holding, something shifts. Not always in the first session, not always in a way you can name, but the soil begins to settle. You might notice a small softening around the breath. You might notice that the blankness is not as solid as it seemed. You might notice that boredom itself is not the enemy, just another visitor passing through. And in noticing without pushing, without pulling, the heart begins to find its own rhythm. This is the practice, not manufacturing warmth, not repeating phrases until you feel something, but sitting with what is present, allowing it to be exactly as it is, and trusting that friendliness is not something you create. It is something that arises when you stop demanding it feel a certain way. The water seeps back into the well. You do not see it happen. You do not hear it arrive. But when you look again, the stone is wet. There is someone in your mind right now, someone whose name tightens your chest, whose face brings a familiar ache. You have learned to see them in a certain way, and that way feels permanent. It feels like truth. But you are holding a photograph of a river taken years ago and calling it the river itself. The Buddha asked a simple question. When you see yourself in others, whom can you harm? It sounds like a moral instruction, but it is not. It is an invitation to look more carefully, to notice that the person you struggle with also trembles before danger, also fears death, also wakes in the night with worry. The qualities you share are not abstract, they are immediate. They are happening now, in both of you. But the mind does not want to see this. The mind wants the story to stay fixed. It wants the person to remain exactly as they were the last time they hurt you. It wants the anger or the disappointment or the fear to have a stable object. Because if the person changes, then what happens to your grievance? What happens to the narrative you have built? This is where the photograph becomes useful. You can hold a picture of a river and say, this is what the river looks like. But the river in the photograph is not moving. The light is frozen. The water that appears in the image is already miles downstream, or evaporated, or absorbed into the ground. The photograph is real, but it is not the river. And the person you see in your mind, the one you have labeled as difficult or cruel or unforgivable, is also not the whole truth. It is one moment held still. It is one angle preserved. The teaching does not ask you to forget what happened. It does not ask you to pretend the harm was not real. It asks you to see that the person who caused the harm is not a solid thing. They are also a process. They are also changing. And the version of them you carry in your mind is often older than you realize. Sometimes it is years out of date. There is a practice that makes this visible. Picture the person you struggle with as a child, not as a thought experiment, but as an actual image. See them at 5 years old, or 7 or 10, before they learned the defenses they now use, before they developed the habits that hurt you. They were small once. They were uncertain. They did not yet know how to protect themselves in the ways that later became harmful to others. This is not about excusing behavior. It is about softening the story enough to let the truth in. The truth is that this person was also shaped by causes and conditions. They were also afraid. They also wanted to be safe. And somewhere along the way, they learned strategies that worked for them but hurt others. just as you did. Just as everyone does. When you see them as a child, something shifts. Not because children are innocent in some sentimental way, but because a child is so clearly unfinished. A child is so obviously in the process of becoming. And that process did not stop. It is still happening. The person you see now is not the final version. They are still being shaped, still responding to pain and confusion, still trying, in their own clumsy way, to survive. The photograph of the river helps here again. If you met the river today, you would not expect it to be exactly as it was in the picture. You would expect movement. You would expect change. The same water is not there. The same light is not there. And yet you call it the same river. You recognize it, even as it shifts. This is closer to the truth of the person. They are recognizable, but not fixed. They carry the past, but they are not only the past. Metta, the practice of unconditional friendliness, begins here. Not with forcing yourself to feel warmth, but with loosening the grip on the fixed image, with letting the person be as fluid as they actually are. When you see them as a child, you are not being naive, you are being accurate. You're remembering that they were not born as your enemy. They became that through a long series of moments, and those moments are still unfolding. All beings tremble before danger, all fear death. The person who hurt you also wakes with a racing heart, also feels the ground shift beneath them, also reaches for safety in ways that sometimes harm. When you see this not as an idea but as a felt truth, the question becomes harder to avoid. Whom can you harm when you see yourself in them? The answer is not that you cannot harm anyone. The answer is that harm becomes more difficult to justify when the other person is no longer solid in your mind, when they are a river, not a photograph. We often carry metta practice like a package we must deliver. We sit down, close our eyes, and begin directing kindness towards someone. First ourselves, then a friend, then a neutral person, then someone difficult. We send it out like letters in the mail. And when the practice feels dry or forced, we assume we are doing it wrong. We think we need to try harder, aim more precisely, feel more intensely. But what if the effort itself is the obstacle? Sunlight does not choose which leaves to warm. It simply shines, and whatever falls within its reach receives it. The sun does not withhold from one branch and favor another. It does not measure whether a leaf has earned its warmth. The light is simply present, and presence is enough. Metta can be like this, not something we manufacture and distribute, but something we allow to be here, a quality of the space itself. When we direct metta at someone, we create a relationship. There is a giver and a receiver. There is me here and you there, and this stream of kindness I am trying to send across the distance. This is not wrong. It can be a beautiful practice. But it is also transactional. We are trading in goodwill. And like any transaction, it can become strained. We wonder if we are giving enough, if it is landing, if the other person feels it. We worry whether we truly mean it. The teaching from the Mahayana tradition offers something quieter. Boundless kindness has no inside or outside, no giver or receiver. It is not a beam we point. It is the light in the room. You can sense this sometimes when you are with someone you love and nothing needs to be said. There is a warmth between you that does not belong to either person. It is just there. You are not generating it moment by moment. You are resting in it. This is closer to what metta actually is. So the practice shifts. Instead of aiming kindness somewhere, we let it be present. We sit quietly and notice what it feels like when friendliness is simply here, like warmth in a room, not directed, not withheld, just available. This might sound abstract, but it is quite physical. You can feel it in the body. There is a softness in the chest, a slight opening in the shoulders. The face relaxes. The breath moves easily. These are not things you force. They happen when you stop trying to send Metta somewhere and simply let it be. You might sit and place your attention on the feeling of the air around you, not the breath moving in and out, but the stillness of the air itself. Notice that it touches all of you at once. It does not choose your hands over your face. It does not prefer your left side to your right. It is simply present, evenly, without effort. Metta can rest in awareness the same way, not as something you do, but as something you allow. When we make Metta transactional, we also make it conditional. We think we must feel a certain way before we can offer it. We must first resolve our anger, our hurt, our confusion. Only then can we be kind. But sunlight does not wait for clouds to clear before it shines. It is already shining. The clouds only block our view of it. Friendliness is already here. It does not require you to be healed first. It does not require you to be worthy. It is not a reward for good behavior. It is the nature of awareness when it is not tangled in judgment. You can test this. Sit quietly and let your attention rest without landing anywhere in particular. Not on the breath, not on the body, not on a person. Just rest. And notice whether there is a quality to this resting, a gentleness, a lack of aggression. This is Metta. Not as an emotion you summon, but as the texture of awareness itself, when it is not pushing anything away. Sometimes we feel nothing at all. The room feels neutral. The heart feels quiet. This is fine. Metta is not a feeling we chase. It is the absence of hostility. When the mind is not clenched, not defended, not measuring, there is already a kind of openness. That openness is enough. You do not need to make it bigger or brighter. You do not need to send it anywhere. Just let it be what it is. Let the sunlight fall where it falls. And if you find yourself reaching for someone to direct it toward, notice that, not as a mistake, but as a habit. The mind likes tasks. It likes to know what it is doing. But Metta does not need a task. It can simply be here, like warmth in a room, touching everything without preference. You water the garden this morning, the soil is soft, the leaves lift, and tomorrow the soil will be dry again. This is not a failure of the garden. This is not a failure of your watering. This is simply how gardens are. Metta practice works the same way. You sit one evening and feel warmth toward yourself, toward someone you love, toward a stranger on the bus. The heart opens, something softens, and you think, good, I have learned this now. I have become a person who feels friendliness. Then, 3 days later, someone cuts you off in traffic and the heat rises in your chest before you even notice it happening. Or your neighbor plays music too loud and you feel that familiar tightness, that edge of irritation. And you think, I have failed. The Metta did not stay. I did not do it right. But Metta was never meant to stay on its own. It is not a permanent state you achieve and then possess. It is a direction you turn toward again and again each time you remember. There is an old Zen saying, fall down 7 times, stand up 8. Not fall down once, stand up, and never fall again. Not become someone who no longer falls. Just stand up one more time than you fall. The practice is not in never falling. The practice is in standing. When you notice irritation rising today, you can pause, just for one breath, one conscious breath before you respond. This is not about suppressing the irritation or pretending it is not there. The irritation is already there. You are not trying to replace it with false warmth. You are simply creating a small space, a gap between what arises and what you do next. In that gap, you can feel the breath move in your body. You can notice the tightness in your shoulders or the heat in your face. You can sense the irritation as a physical experience, not just a story about who is wrong. This one breath is watering the garden, not once for all time. Just once, right now, in this moment. The garden does not hold water forever. The soil dries, the sun is hot, the wind pulls moisture from the leaves. And so you return with the watering can. Not because you failed yesterday, because this is what gardens need. You will feel Metta some days and not feel it others. You will be patient with one person and snappish with the next. You will have moments of deep ease and moments when your heart feels like a closed fist. All of this is normal. All of this is part of the practice. The word metta is sometimes translated as loving kindness, but another translation is simply friendliness. Unconditional friendliness. Not the kind that depends on someone being easy to like. Not the kind that appears only when you are rested and calm. The kind that is a choice you make, a direction you face, even when the conditions are not perfect, especially when the conditions are not perfect. Equanimity holds this. Equanimity is the ground that lets you see irritation arise without being swept away by it. It is the steadiness that allows you to notice you have fallen and then stand up again without drama, without shame. You do not need to feel warm and glowing to practice metta. You only need to be willing to pause, to take that one breath, to choose in that small moment not to hearten further. Someone speaks to you with an edge in their voice. You feel the reaction forming. Before you speak, you breathe, just once. The irritation is still there. But now there is also awareness. Now there is a small choice. Maybe you respond more gently than you would have. Maybe you do not. Either way, you have watered the garden. You have turned toward friendliness, even if only for the length of one breath. This is enough. This is the practice. You will need to do it again tomorrow. The soil will be dry. Your heart will tighten around something new. And you will pause again, breathe again, choose again. Not because you are broken. Not because you have failed to become someone who never feels irritation. Because this is how the heart is tended. Fall down 7 times, stand up 8. The number of times you fall does not matter. What matters is that you are willing to stand, that you are willing to return, that you remember again and again that metta is not a place you arrive at and stay, it is a direction. And you can face that direction as many times as you need to. Each breath is a new beginning. Each moment of noticing is watering the garden. The practice does not ask you to be perfect, it only asks you to return. You may have noticed something as you practice sending friendliness to yourself, to those you love, to strangers, to those who challenge you. The heart does not actually divide the world into categories. That division is something the mind creates, a way of organizing experience. But the heart itself, when it is open, does not pass and measure. It simply meets what is present. This is not a grand realization you need to hold on to. It is more like noticing that water does not choose which part of the riverbed to touch. It moves according to its nature, flowing where there is space, settling where there is stillness. Metta practice is not about forcing yourself to feel a certain way toward people you find difficult. It is about removing the obstacles that keep the heart closed. When you repeat the phrases, when you imagine someone receiving your goodwill, you are not manufacturing emotion. You are softening the grip of old patterns. You are making space. Some days the practice will feel warm and full. Other days it will feel dry, mechanical, like you are saying words into a void. Both are fine. The heart has its own rhythms. What matters is that you continue to offer the intention, even when nothing seems to be happening. Especially then. There is a kind of trust that develops over time. You begin to see that you do not need to control the outcome of your practice. You do not need to feel a surge of love in order for metta to be real. The willingness itself is enough. The turning toward friendliness again and again, even when it feels small or uncertain, is the practice. And slowly, almost without noticing, something shifts. You find yourself pausing before reacting. You catch the edge of harshness in your thoughts and soften it. You meet someone's frustration with a little more space. These are not dramatic changes. They are quiet. like the way a pond clears after the silt has settled. The Buddha spoke of metta as a protection, not in the sense of a shield, but as a quality that changes the atmosphere around you. When you move through the world with friendliness as your baseline, you are less likely to create friction. You are less likely to take things personally. You meet life with a little more ease. This does not mean you become passive or that you stop discerning harm from kindness. It means you stop adding unnecessary tension to what is already difficult. You stop turning every interaction into a test of your worth or a confirmation of your fears. Metta is not about being liked. It is not about being nice in a way that erases your boundaries. It is about meeting life without the constant need to defend or prove yourself. It is about recognizing that everyone you encounter is navigating their own confusion, their own pain, their own longing for peace. When you see this clearly, friendliness becomes natural, not because you have trained yourself to be good, but because you understand that hostility only adds to the weight everyone is already carrying. You can return to this practice anytime. In the morning, before the day begins. At night, when your mind is restless. In the middle of a conversation, when you feel yourself tightening. You do not need to sit formally. You can simply pause, take a breath, and silently offer the phrases. May I be safe. May I be happy. May I be healthy. May I live with ease. And if the words feel stale, you can let them go and simply rest in the intention. You can place your hand on your chest and feel the warmth there. You can imagine your heart as a still pond, reflecting the sky, undisturbed by the wind. The water does not try to be calm. It simply returns to stillness when nothing is agitating it. Your heart is the same. When you stop stirring it with judgment and resistance, it settles on its own. This is the gift of metta. Not that it makes you perfect or immune to pain, but that it gives you a place to return to. A baseline of friendliness that does not depend on circumstances. A quiet confidence that you can meet whatever arises without closing down. If you would like to continue exploring these practices, there are other reflections waiting for you. No rush. They will be here when you are ready. For now, let yourself rest in the stillness you have created. Let the water settle. Let the heart be as it is.